Hello, my name is Alex Freund. Today I'm going to be presenting to you about Alexander the Great, or Alexander of Macedonia. So, to get things started, I asked the question, who is Alexander the Great? Well, Alexander the Great was born in 356 BCE to Philip II of Macedonia and Olympias of Epirus. As I mentioned before, being born in 356, he would assume power only 20 years later in 336 BCE after his father Philip was assassinated by his own bodyguard. Sadly, only 13 years later, in 323 BCE, Alexander would die from malaria in Babylon. I move on to asking the question of where did this all take place? Where does the story of Alexander begin? Well, the story with Alexander first begins in Greece in 336 BCE. Following the death of his father, Greece was experiencing a heavy revolt period where some residents felt that Macedonia was treating their neighbors in the south, or their conquered people, Greece, whom Philip had previously conquered during his reign, unfairly. So a revolt ensued, to which Alexander decided to send troops and crush the rebellion before it could ruin his empire or cause any further harm to his grand plan for his empire to come. Following 336 BCE and the revolt, Alexander turned his sights on Persia and King Darius. And in 334 BCE, Alexander officially launches the attack on the Persian forces. This would be one of 3 battles in which Alexander would engage Darius. The first one would teach him a valuable lesson to not underestimate the Persian troops, as well as to keep in mind that Persia would be a formidable enemy to whom he could not just tramp over like all the rest. According to Britannica.com, Alexander would fight the Persian Empire from 334 BCE till 330 BCE. Now, during this time, Britannica also says that he would go down the coastline of the Mediterranean, conquering what is now considered parts of Syria, Lebanon, what is the other one? Israel, and now Egypt. When he gets to Egypt, with little to no force coming against his armies, he finds the port of Alexandria, except it wasn't Alexandria yet, because he hadn't invented it or dreamed up the idea to build a port there, which would, in his time, become the cornerstone for trade and culture. Now, in 330 BCE, Alexander would meet Darius for the final time and defeat him. Following the defeat of Darius and his eventual demise at the hand of his own troops, Alexander would rightfully become the king of Persia and would essentially topple a dynasty of power and influence that the Persians held over that area of the world. Now, from 330 to 327 BCE, Alexander would go through a lot of different changes. For one, Alexander would marry Roxana, who was daughter to Oxyrates, if I'm saying that correctly, who was, I believe, a Persian princess. This was a political marriage in an attempt to create stronger terms or stronger ties with Alexander's conquered people. Following 327 BCE, Alexander would advance to the southeast, where he would head towards India and defeat King Porus in the northern part, which is now Pakistan of India. Following his defeat of Porus, Alexander would push further until nearly reaching the Ganges, at which point his troops would forcibly turn on him and force him to retreat home or make the advance home due to mental and physical fatigue. They were tired of war. According to Bio.com, once Alexander the Great of Macedonia returns home or returns to Babylon, he has trouble managing his empire. And so from 326 BCE to 323 BCE, Alexander struggles to maintain order across this vast empire that he has now established. In an attempt to unify both the Macedonian and the Persian peoples, Alexander mandates that Persian nobles and Macedonian nobles must marry into their respective families, and in order to form a more cohesive bond between the two people. However, the Macedonians misinterpret what Alexander is trying to do, and it only alienates him further from his people that have already had some doubts in their great leader after he was initially letting Macedonian troops go and pulling in from his conquered territories in an attempt to create a foreign standing military. So in 323 BCE, Alexander is plotting, or not even plotting, but planning for the attack on Rome and Carthage when he is suddenly struck by malaria and dies suddenly on June 13th, 323 BCE, at only the age of 32. After a 13-year hiatus, or not even hiatus, but after a 13-year push and conquest, Alexander dies and leaves nobody to inherit his great empire, and thus it falls into chaos and ruin. Now, before I end this speech, I want to get down to it. I asked the question, how was Alexander able to accomplish so much in such a short amount of time? To consider this question, you have to look at the fact that Alexander was born a noble. According to Britannica, Alexander was provided with the best education available at his time, and even trained or was tutored by Aristotle, who was possibly one of the most progressive minds of the time. Through Aristotle, he would learn politics, science, geography, mathematics, and the list goes on. Bio.com suggests that his father, Philip II, and his mother, Olympias, and their desire to see Alex succeed as a warrior, a conqueror, and as a king, made him prone to be the success that he is embodied today. In closing statements, I'm once again going to ask, who is Alexander the Great? Is he a conqueror? Is he a king? After all the facts that I've told you, perhaps you should decide. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will answer them. Thank you very much for your time.